Hello, my friend Tim and Buddy, coming at you with this week's stocks to watch. And in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I'm going to go ahead and do the full video of stocks to watch. Instead of 5 and 5, I'll go back to 5 and 5 next week for trading and investing. Typically, this is what I go through with the pro members every weekend and every morning, pre market prep, and every evening with the post-market wraps. But let's go ahead and get into it. A lot of economic data. We'll look at that in a second. Coming up this week, Bitcoin mania is going absolutely bonkers right now. Yeah, it's funny. I'm seeing some articles. Bitcoin, bubble. Just remember this. There are a lot of bubbles out there. There have been a lot of bubbles, and I'm not smart enough to know whether Bitcoin is in a bubble and blockchain is in a bubble right now, or if it isn't. What I do think is that blockchain is going to be here for a long time to come. I don't think the cryptocurrencies are going to go away. And I would only say this, that bubbles and euphoria can last for a lot longer than people ever anticipate. Go back to the marijuana index and some of the moves that those stocks made. Um, they lasted. They were overbought for a very long time and went to stratospheric prices. So, don't try to be a hero. Or like I wrote in the blog, don't try to be Nostradamus. I mean, once momentum gets a hold of something, it can last for a long time. There will be pullbacks, there will be corrections, but don't think that all of a sudden that is the bubble popping, because bubbles can last for a long, long time. So just be very, very careful if you're looking to try and get short. There are some indexes out there that look overbought. Things can stay overbought for a long time, so keep that in mind. Uh, Barron's mentioned infrastructure could be a good sector to keep an eye on. I happen to agree with that thought process. Uranium and marijuana, ironically, those sectors are looking kind of interesting. There's some action happening there. Those could be sectors to keep an eye on. All right. I'm not going to go through all of the individual sectors. Like I said, there are some in there that are overbought, that look overdone. Could we see a short-term pullback or correction? We could, and we could also see these things just keep moving. So it's going to be an interesting week. We'll take a look at the sectors. We'll take a look. I got a pretty good long list of stocks. I don't have everything. Um, we could be here for a very long time if I were to put all of the stocks that are on my radar on this list. But there's a good assortment here, and I'll go through why I like them. But let's go ahead and just get right into it. Twitter is actually not on the list. It was on the list 5 and 5 last week and had a pretty darn nice run last week. It is getting to a point where we could see a little bit of a pullback. It's had, basically 5 days up in a row. It is piercing the upper Bollinger Band, overbought. Look for a pullback on Twitter, maybe into the 2150 area. But this is more of a long-term hold consideration. Some interesting stuff going on there with potential merger of Square and Twitter. Just a lot of chatter. Possible takeout candidate. But, no doubt the stock has been acting really strong over the last couple of months. Last month. Let's just say last month there. All right, so let's take a look at the economic data that's going to be hitting next week. Now we have, like I said, a lot of we've got new home sales. We've got S&P, Case-Shiller, consumer confidence, manufacturing index, Richmond manufacturing, GDP, which will be a big deal, mortgage applications. A lot of Fed speak. We've got Janet Yellen speaking. I imagine that's probably her last presentation. But pending home sales, petroleum status report, beige book on Wednesday afternoon. And then we've got jobless claims, personal income outlays. We got Chicago PMI. And then we've got more motor vehicle sales, a couple more Fed speakers, PMI manufacturing, ISM manufacturing, and construction spending. So a lot of stuff next week that could impact the markets one way or another. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. And then we've got some earnings next week that are also of interest to me, and I'm going to put these up now. Some of these made the actual stocks to watch list, and some of them have not. But I would recommend, taking a look at all of these charts that have the red circles around, or not red circles, but the green circles around them. Momo, Nomad Foods, and Pure Storage, which has had a really nice run. Marvell Tech, which just had a huge pop. Autodesk is unbelievably. You want to see a beautiful chart? Take a look at that one. Yintech, Workday, Box, Guidewire, Semtech. Some of these I'm interested just because of the sector that they're in. We got some semis that are reporting. Semtech, Synopsys, Kroger actually has a pretty good look. Maybe is the demise of Kroger a little overdone? I mean, it's actually had a pretty nice little bounce. Got an interesting look on the daily. We'll be looking at that in a minute. Titan Machinery, that's also on my list. Golar, Nutanix, Ambarella, another semi that could be interesting. GoPro tends to run with that one if they report a good number. Yext, which is a recent IPO that I happen to own a little bit of, and it's in the long-term hold portfolio. And then this Universal Technical, that's a really small float, but interesting, kind of an interesting looking chart on that one. So we do have some interesting earnings. We've also got some retail, right? Some Big Lots and Ultra, and there's several PVH. There's several different sectors that are reporting and worth keeping an eye on. But let's go ahead and get into the list of stocks that I happen to like for this week. So MGTI, I had this on the pre-market prep on Friday, as I was surprised that this one hadn't run. This created a really nice day trading opportunity, and you could see more to come here. Some of these names continue to run after the market close. Mara being one of them. Beautiful trade in Mara that I actually closed all out of on Friday. It was actually just a day trade that I took. I held some of those shares overnight, and that turned out to be a pretty darn good trade from Wednesday. And actually, I think I got out at 5 and the last remaining shares, and that was probably a little early. Left a little money on the table as it kept running, but it's super extended. Doesn't mean that it can't continue. Bitcoin and Ethereum are making new highs this weekend. So, this Bitcoin blockchain mania could continue, and MGTI could have a red to green type move. It's had some pretty big runs in the past, and this is the first day of a trend line break on some pretty good volume on Friday. So look for potential continuation, day trade, maybe even a higher risk swing in MGTI. NETE had a pop on Friday, got back over the 50-day EMA, came up and tested the 200 SMA and pulled back. So I'm not sure what the pop was for on NETE, but could look for a potential continuation move there as well. Maybe look for a pullback to 450 or so. See if that holds as an area to bounce. I'm looking at that as more of a day trading opportunity than a swing trade. They just did a recent reverse split, only 1.3 million shares in the float. you've got to make sure that there's a good amount of shares trading hands in order to take a trade in this thing. You've got to have some liquidity to be able to get in and out. This one you look to play size appropriate, but could be interesting for a day trading opportunity. SENS, I've been watching this one consolidate for quite a while, and it's over the 200-day. It's was just kind of bumping up against this 50 EMA, and finally broke out on Friday on some pretty good volume. Now, I did not catch this entry, but I'm looking for maybe a pullback. It's flirting with the $3 holla, looking for a pullback to 290 or so and see if that holds as support. Want to see some volume in this name. Pull back to 290, 285, somewhere in that area. Maybe this just consolidates for 2 or 3 days after that pop, builds a nice little flag. Definitely worth keeping an eye on this one for a day trading opportunity. Maybe a higher risk swing on a pullback to support. That could be an option with SENS as well. INSG, watched this one on Friday get a nice little pop over an area of price resistance, coming up into another area of price resistance just overhead, but did reclaim the 200-day moving average, right? Now, this is likely, you could see maybe a red to green on this one, go up and test this $1.85, $1.86 area, maybe even a 2 test, but it's overbought and approaching an area of potential price resistance. So maybe you look for a pullback to a $1.60 on this one, red to green, then you go get up that $1.86, you take some off the table, and then maybe you look for a 2 test. But INSG, 43 million shares in the float, 13% short interest. I actually played this one not too long ago from back here, and closed it out, took the profit, but I think it's getting kind of interesting again, worth having on the radar for either a day trade or higher risk swing. IMDZ, so I've got several names that are biotech names. Now, biotech itself is not looking all that great. The sector is, looking a little bit on. The chart is not all that great on biotechs. It's been probably one of the weakest sectors out there. But ASH is coming up, which is a big conference in December. It runs the 9th through the 11th, and there are a lot of companies that have poster presentations and updates on trials that will be presenting at ASH. So, you could wait to the event to see what happens with some of these stocks. The other thing that could happen is that these things run in anticipation of the ASH event. So, IMDZ is probably one of my favorites because there's a significant amount of insider buying and 10% owner buying all throughout September and October. Now, back in July, they did back here in October, they did a offering, and it priced at $4.10. Okay, so there was some insider buying that happened in that area. I mean, you've got a director that's bought 65,000 shares at 407. Another director bought 50,000. Actually, he bought about 75,000 shares between 426 and 458. If you go to rank and file and looked up the insider buying transactions, there's just a tremendous amount in this area. And what could happen is you could get these runs in anticipation of the event. So, this is kind of at an interesting spot. I think $4, close to $4, would be a good entry potentially for a higher risk swing. And then you look for a nice move into the ASH event, and maybe you lock profits, or hopefully you lock profits before the actual event. Maybe if you lock enough profits, you can keep a few shares for a lotto play through the event, or you can just get out completely before the event. But this is one that I definitely am going to be keeping an eye on, and I would like to probably take an entry close to $4. Ears reports. Now this is one of the report. This is one that reports on. Hold on a second. They report on Tuesday before the open. That's this Auris Medical. Now it's already had a pretty nice run into this earnings event. Right now we've got a golden cross which just occurred, the 50 crossing over the 200 day. We're right at price resistance. I mean, this thing went from 65 cents to 93 cents. The issue here is that it's already extended a bunch of energy coming up into this event. So if they disappoint, then you're likely going to see a pullback in this stock. Maybe it pulls back down to this cluster of moving averages and holds a support. That could be an interesting spot to take it for a potential swing. It looks as though it's been getting some pretty decent volume, only 21.6 million shares in the float. You know, if they have anything significant that they report on earnings and surprise or beat the street, then maybe we see a break over the $1 holla with some conviction. So a couple of things going on here. You got a potential flat top breakout, but you are extended heading into an event. So we'll see how this plays out. It's overbought. Maybe you wait until after the event, see how this thing trades. It pulls back into the 60-cent area. That could be a spot to take it for a swing as well. All right, BLDP. Full disclosure, I just sent out a trade plan, I think it was a week ago, on BLTP to the pro members over at Alpha Wolf Trading, and did take a position, a starter position, in my long-term hold account. This is one that I think is worth holding on to for the long haul. Alternative energy, electric cars, fuel cells. I think they have a very interesting couple of businesses, actually, and definitely worth having this one on your radar. Of all the fuel cell names like FCEL and what's the other one? Plug Power. This is my favorite name. They have a pretty good balance sheet, decent cash flow. This is, you know, fundamentally one of the best stories out there, I think, and worth having as a long-term hold investment. I took it as close to $5 as possible, and it's starting to break over this trend line and testing the 20 SMA. So more of a swing or long-term hold consideration there. Close to $5, I think, is a decent entry, and that's the story on that one. Next, full disclosure, I already have a position in this one as well. I think my entry on this one was around $13, close to 13, maybe it was $13.50. This is also in my long-term hold. One of my members actually brought this to my attention when they first IPO'd. He's got a position in it. He's, you know, I think it was Morgan Stanley that brought these guys. You know, he thinks the CEO is a rock star of this company, and in the long run, this is going to be a really good story. So, do have a starter in here. They report on Thursday after the close. Now, this is coming up also into an area of price resistance, right around the $14 holla. It's busted through there a couple times, gotten up to about $14.50, and maybe that's what we do again this time into the earnings report. But again, had a pretty big move ahead of earnings. So unless they really crush it and guide, you know, above expectations, this could actually wind up pulling back. And then I think you look somewhere around the $13 area or $12.50 area to maybe look to take a position in YEXT, either in your long-term hold as an investment or as a swing trade opportunity. And if it takes out $14.50 with conviction, you're likely going to have a bit of resistance around the $15 mark. So we'll see how that plays out, but I like YEXT more for the long-term hold. BZUN reported earnings, great earnings. You can tell. No, you can't, because the stock tanked off of earnings. But you know, I'm pretty sure that BZUN did the same thing back here. They reported a good earnings report. Stock pulled back, consolidated for a while, and then it had a pretty nice run. I like this one for the long-term hold. I like this story. You know, tied in with Baba and Tencent, I believe. You know, you got Cyber Monday happening. Singles Day just happened. And I think this is still a really interesting story. If it breaks below this 2860 area and gets down to 2560s in that area, I will be looking to take that as a long-term hold play. You know, look, it's a Chinese name, so you got to be somewhat cautious and careful, but this is one that I like the story of quite a bit. It's above the 200-day. You come back down and you test this price here, and then you test that 200-day, and I'm inclined to take a position, start a position again. Now, it may not break through the 2660. It may, you know, hold here and consolidate, and then maybe it gets a pop. So I'm watching this area right here. Again, like I said, more of a long-term hold or swing consideration on a pullback to potential support of the 200-day, or maybe where it's currently sitting could be an interesting spot to take a starter. KDMN. KDMN is another one that will be updating their phase 2 data December 10th at ASH. Now, it's got a nice looking setup on the daily. It's above all the moving averages. It had this big run. It's been consolidating, building up some energy, sitting on top of the 50-day, above the 200-day, and it's approaching oversold. So this could be one that, you know, runs into the ASH event, and I think worth keeping an eye on. Hold on a second. It looks like they have a Jefferies presentation as well. All right, that's behind us. Okay. So, you know, flirting with this trend line above the 50-day. It's only got 28 million shares in the float, 7% short interest. So if you take a play like this, you take it size appropriate, high risk because of the fact that it's a biotech. But this is one that could definitely move in advance of ASH. Let's see, HEAR. Let's take a look at HEAR. So this was my penny stock of the week for last week for the pro members, right? So what we had was a little reversal candle here, came down and tested this trend line, the top of the trend line, bounced off of it, and we're kind of pulling back. What's got my attention on this one, and I played this last year at about this time, because this season is typically the best quarter for this company. Now, they guided down. They licensed out a technology that they've been developing that was a cash burn pain in the neck for this company. They've now licensed that out, and I think they've got one more write down for that technology, and then then they're smooth sailing. They're increasing their margins. They make headsets for gamers, and like I said, typically the fourth quarter and first quarter are their best quarters, right? So you got the holiday season coming up. Insider just picked up, the CEO just picked up 83,000 shares in November at 54 cents. So a lot of times what will happen is you get these pullbacks or you get this pullback, and then you get a little pop, and then what happens? You come back and you get a retest of that bottom. I'm looking maybe for a retest. I think I have sent out a trade plan to the members over at Alpha Wolf Trading, the exact trade plan of where I'm looking to get into this stock, what the targets are. But this is the penny play to potentially keep an eye on. Look for a pullback to an area of support. ARWR, nice look on the daily time frame. It's sitting on top of the 50 EMA, the 20 SMA. I mean, this cluster moving averages right here. Looking for a break over the trend line, a break over the $4 holla right? Take out that 50 SMA. Nice big run, pulled back, and now it seems to have found some support in that 335 area, looking for some kind of a catalyst to take it through $4, and I think you get maybe a test back up into that 450 area. GLYC, another one that will be presenting at ASH, that has a pretty interesting looking daily above the 200 day. Looks like 10 is kind of holding as support. It's coming up towards this trend line, which is likely going to act as resistance. This is probably, I mean, it's a decent looking setup on the daily. It's only got 8.9 million shares in the float and 36% short interest. So, you know, this one has actually been kind of grinding higher, and it's coming up into that resistance. Maybe it becomes more compelling on a pullback to 11 or so. But one that could run or could continue to grind higher into the ASH event. MSFT. So, you know, look, big, thick stock, 7.6 billion shares in the float. Tech has been on fire. It's been consolidating for a while, and they have an investors day this week. So, you know, look, Microsoft you got to admit, that is a beautiful, beautiful chart. Now, it would probably be ideal to get it on a gap fill, pull back to $79, but you know, if they have some good comments at this investors presentation, you could see a break over that trend line and take out $85, $86. So big, thick stock, more of a swing or long-term hold than it is a day trading opportunity, but it's a beautiful looking chart, lower left to upper right. And you know, if they have an interesting investors day, maybe we get a nice big pop in Microsoft. AFMD, I don't think you could go wrong really, you know, owning Microsoft in your portfolio for the long term. If it pulls back and fills that gap, that could be a real opportunity to get into it for a long-term hold position. AFMD, another one that will be doing a poster presentation at ASH December 9th. And, you know, I've been watching this one for so long, and I actually missed this. I've been watching $1.95, $2 hold as support for a very long time on AFMD. And it looks like what they did was they shook out some, you know, probably weak hands that were watching this hold as support, shook those people out, reversed, and then is bounced back up to the $2 area. Now, I think, you know, it's up 5 days in a row, but this is one that could run into ASH on a break over, you know, 220 with some conviction. Maybe this gets a run. I mean, it's kind of been, you know, in this trading in this range for a while. Would have been nice to see this reversal candle actually. Now, this could actually drift back down and retest that area. It is overbought. You know, December 9th through the 11th, they will be presenting on the 9th. This has only got 34 million shares in the float. Not a big short interest, but definitely one to maybe keep an eye on next week. And I think it gets more interesting as close to $2 or $1.95 as possible if it pulls back and tests there. TWI, this is one that I put out a trade plan for the pro members. This was in anticipation of Deere's as a sympathy play to Deere's earnings. Titan Internaut Farm Construction Equipment. Nice little pop. It's coming up into resistance, and it seems price resistance, potential price resistance, a little overbought. You know, maybe on a drift back to test this trend line, maybe to $11, $10.80 or so to the 20-day. You got the 200-day moving average there, which has been acting as support. I think this is more of a swing or long-term hold consideration, but it has a pretty good looking setup on the daily. You know, I had a nice big pop. I believe that was off earnings, pulled back. maybe you look for a pullback into the $11 mark. That could be an interesting spot to take it for a swing. Only 49 million shares in the float. Doesn't trade a lot of shares, 100,000 shares on Friday, but consolidating, and I think definitely worth keeping an eye on. The other thing is we are kind of moving our way towards a maybe a golden cross, right? We get that 50 day to bust above that 200 day. Could just consolidate here a bit more, but I do like the setup on the daily. So Titan Machinery reports on Thursday before the open, and we're looking at a potential little flat top breakout there. Take out the 1625 or 16, let's call it 1650. Take that out with some conviction, you could have a nice pop. The issue is it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 days into their earnings report, right? So it's overbought. It's had a nice run. If they report good earnings, this thing could still pull back. Even if they report good earnings and great guidance, we could see a pullback. And I think if that happens, you keep an eye on these areas of potential price support, like $15, where we've got several moving averages that could act as support. You look for it to pull back there and hold. If it breaks through 15, this is if they report a good earnings report and give good guidance, then maybe you look for it to pull back to $14.50 or $14 and see if that acts as support, and then that could be a good entry for a swing or a high risk for a higher risk swing or a higher risk long-term hold. And I say higher risk because 15 million shares in the float, right? Very small float, 10% short interest, but does have, this one could be interesting. I mean, if they crush earnings, and you get the gap up, and then it pulls back, and not only does it pull back and break, down back below the 200 day or something, that could just scare some people, shake some people out, right? So I like Titan quite a bit, but it is a small float. You got to be careful with that kind of stock. All right, BLCM flirting with the $10 holla, right? Looks like $9 is acting as pretty good support. We had a test here, had a test here. Looks like pretty good support on BLCM. They've got a presentation in on December 9th at ASH. All right, so it's below the 20-day. You got a lot of resistance, a lot of moving average resistance overhead, but take out $10. I think maybe we get a test up to the 200-day, 1150 or so. And you got to, look, you get this on a pullback to 960, 950, and then you get a bounce and test up 1150. You put your stop below $9. I mean, that's pretty good risk reward. So worth keeping an eye on BLCM, another one that could potentially move into ASH. KR. So Greenlight Capital just took 362,000 shares in November. This is Kroger, right? So really good. I mean, it is setting up for potentially what could be a nice opportunity here. This is a big, thick stock, right? 814 million shares in the float, 9% short interest. It is a little bit overbought. It's working off that overbought condition. Just reclaimed the 100 EMA. We'll see what these earnings report. Typically Thanksgiving and this time of year is usually good for the grocers. We'll see how they report, but if this pulls back to $22, maybe that is the area of price support for a swing consideration or a long-term hold consideration. If they report good earnings, they could take out that trend line. Maybe you get a pop up into the 200-day moving average. They report Thursday before the market opens. STML. So you're going to get a detailed list or a detailed update on at Ash from December 9th, phase 2. And this already had a nice big pop. It's been in consolidation. This was already on my radar actually for a break over $15. Um, you know, maybe look for a pullback into the $14 range. See if that holds as support for a bounce. I mean, this actually looks like it kind of wants to pull back a little bit. Had a little reversal candle there on Friday. But still, this is one that could make a move. 22 million shares in the float, 7% short interest. Potential day trading opportunity there. All right, let's see what else we've got going on here. And then MGNX. So this one's got phase 1 data due at Ash on December 9th. Looking for a pullback maybe to 19 in this area for price support. Was acting as price resistance, now could potentially act as price support, and one that we'll be reporting. And real quick, I think I might have missed something that I wanted to show you guys. Okay, here we go. So just to kind of make a case of what I'm talking about. So this one had data that was going to be coming up on July 11th, right? This KDMN. And if you look at what it did in June, right ahead of July 11th, it went on this big run into the event. Now July 11th was actually over here, right there. And look what it did after they did the presentation. The presentation was good. They presented data. The data was good, but it had already run into that event. And that's what I'm talking about with some of these biotechs. The same thing could happen heading into this ASH event. All right, so that's it. Keep an eye on some oil names, MRO, and I mean there are several names out there that I like quite a bit. With oil moving to new highs, but that we could see a little bit of a pullback there. But be careful with any of these Bitcoin blockchain names, right? Next week, not saying you can't trade them, just make sure you trade them size appropriate, right? All right. I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. I hope you found some good ideas in there. Good luck trading next week, and I will see you all next week back to the normal 5 and 5.